All right, I'm going to start right here at 6 o'clock. I'll call the meeting to order at 6 p.m. First order of business is the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Thank you. The next order of business is the Board of Education's chair report. So the only thing I have from last week that we met till today is last night, Jeff and I did attend the Board of Finance meeting. It was the CapEx presentation. So we did, Jeff presented the capital expenditures that we approved last meeting. It was met with some questions, but many of them revolved around the security grant. So there'll be more discussion on that likely on Saturday, I think is the idea. Carrie, the Board of Finance Chair, is going to try to set that up for Saturday to go into executive session to have additional discussion surrounding that particular item. So again, that can't be discussed in public. Outside of that, there weren't many other major questions. We may get more from them on Saturday during the budget presentation. And as we go back to look at the budget with their comments and their direction. Outside of that, that should close the Board of Education Chair's report, and we'll go on to the Superintendent report.
Just really quickly, had the opportunity, been visiting with the schools. Students are absolutely amazing from the things that they say, but the things that they're learning and just what they could prove that they could do. So I'm just, again, always in awe of the work of our students. From first grade and comparing numbers and then communicating with one another why certain numbers are greater than others, representing them in more than one fashion, not just a numerical, but also with manipulatives, and then, defending their answers with their peers. It's just really powerful to see in the world of mathematics and what they're engaged in. Continue to see strong literacy efforts across our district, utilizing the programs that we have in place and students responding appropriately to that as well. So just a major kudos to our kids for working so hard and for our staff. Just real quick for our student superintendent's report today. Yep, no problem. So additionally, the Board of Finance has been invited to our buildings, so that we will do that on Friday the 15th, starting at 9 a.m. So Chairwoman Carrie Guilfoyle had invited Board of Finance members to come along for the tour. So we're more than excited to have them come and visit our schools and see our work that we do every day. So we're excited to welcome our Board of Finance on Friday morning.
Thank you, Jeff. Moving right along to new business, increasing educator diversity plan.
Yep. In accordance with Public Act 23-167, which is a very robust act, boards of education across the state of Connecticut must submit a plan to increase their educator diversity. And special thanks to Mike, Amy, Kelly, Heather, Janet in central office, also to Kellyanne, the entire team. Everybody joined together as we met for a day where at Ed Advance, where we met to talk about legislative priorities and things that we have to consider. This is one of the items that we worked with Ed Advance and a lot of other Litchfield County superintendents and directors across our area, and knowing that we do our absolute best to continue to promote and hire any candidate of culturally diverse backgrounds. This plan we are looking to submit, this needs board approval. So we would submit this plan and then await their feedback. So we've been doing this as a large consortium and putting together a multitude of ideas. So this was a template that was provided, and then our team has met and really tailor-made it for New Hartford, knowing where we live, the demographics that are representative, our students that we represent and our families, and attuned that to this plan. This is taking a look at obviously three main sections. The first is recruitment. So making sure that we are visible at job fairs, social media, different platforms of that nature. So you can see the goal there is to provide opportunities to increase a culturally diverse workforce. And we want it to be reflective of our school, our student population and demographics. You also see hiring and selecting. There's a process there to go through. A lot of these things we are doing, but we want to make sure that we're doing them with a little bit more of a microscope, looking for any particular biases in our interview questions, for example. So we'll be doing an audit of all of our processes for hiring and selection, but we also want to support candidates and support those that we hire with appropriate mentoring programs and making sure that they feel valued and that they are embraced within our community for all of our schools. The last is, of course, retention. So that's, again, looking at supporting staff members that have been hired and making sure that they feel, again, embraced, that they are part of our inclusive culture and climate of the work that we're doing, and also inclusive if there are exit surveys or finding out what did not go well. We want to make sure that's part of our plan as well. So those are the highlights of our plan that we look to submit after board discussion and approval. So this would need a motion to discuss and then a motion for approval to submit to the state of Connecticut.
Does anyone want to make a motion to approve?
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Penny. Do we have a second?
Sorry, I have a question about the plan.
After we get a second.
First.
Second by Tim. Discussion. Kristen?
Gotcha. So the discussion I have is just around the hiring plan. I just want to call to your attention the fact that you have goals in here to be completing everything by fall 2024 or the end of the calendar year, but the checkpoint goals that you gave yourselves are not really adding up to that. So I didn't know if you wanted to give yourselves a little bit more time to implement the plan, given the check-in points that you've got there. Basically, you're only meeting twice a year, hoping for 25% to be done by each check-in, but you only have 2 check-ins, maybe.
Yeah, originally it had monthly check-ins and it felt
Okay.
like it was a lot for the size of our district. So we did that strategically to try to make sure that we have at least 2 opportunities to connect with. We felt that with that timeline that we would be able to achieve that. And if we do need to move things around, we certainly would. I'm assuming that you're taking a look at the audit job descriptions, right, in fall 2024?
Yeah, all 4 out of those
Yeah.
5 things are but due to be completed by the end of the year, but your check-ins don't seem to give you, the goals for your check-ins don't seem to give you enough time to get that done by the end of the year.
Got it. So take me to the other part that you're concerned with. So the hiring and selection process, we're just, again, auditing, looking at the interview questions, making sure we have a consistent timeline, and then considering diversity in the composition of interview committees. That will be ongoing. There's no specific timeliness to that. And then implementing a system for tracking of progress of applicants. So we're thinking of a Google type of database. So then walk me back to the other component for the check-ins. Are you looking at,
I'm just looking
For
at
the
right
recruit-
next to that column, you're
Yep.
saying you've got check-ins biannually, January and June.
Yep.
You'll have 25% of the work done by
Yep.
each check-in.
Yep.
That's all, like, that math doesn't math. So if you're getting 25% of the work done in between each check-in, you're not going to be done by the end of the calendar year if you're only having 2 check-ins. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I do. So that's our,
You can handle that however you want.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, if you're only planning on getting 25% of the work done in between each check-in, you need a little bit more time.
got it. Yeah, this was a goal that was set that would be, I think, realistic because there were maybe higher percentages of thought that you get a lot more done in that time frame. And I don't think that a lot of the descriptions, because we've done some of this work already, trying to give us some of that leeway in that language, putting 100% obviously would be unattainable in such a short period of time. I get what you're saying.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Any additional discussion? Good, Tom?
So to make a statement that this vision, our organization is intentional in hiring excellent educators and will not hire based on race. That seems like a safe statement to make, right?
Is that here?
No, it's not.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. I was trying to follow along and I don't remember writing
It's
that.
the vision on the front, exactly, right? You
Mhm.
don't remember.
Mhm.
Our organization is intentional in hiring excellent educators and will not hire based on race.
Mhm.
Isn't that a safe statement to make?
It is of one element, yes.
But we're basing our hiring status on filling a quota.
No,
Well, it says one of our
Nope.
goals here is to count at the beginning of the year versus the end of the year
correct.
to
Dependent
measure
on
success.
from the applicants that have applied for such position, but there's also mitigating factors in there which are those risk elements of positions being available. So those are all factors that would mitigate any of those comparisons. So if the concern is we've had a pool of candidates that did not all qualify, because you get what you get. So we have no control over that. And if at the end of the year, they're not a percentage, which we did not put that in here specifically, that we hired or did not hire, the mitigating factor there, well, maybe there wasn't a position that was open. So that would have to be taken into account and consideration.
So but this is completely void of merit.
I don't think it's void of merit. I think it's putting a plan in place to state that we are working towards, if, again, the state has stated this has to be part of your policies of what you do. So this is our plan going forward to ensure that we are not being biased, discriminatory towards anybody that applies for our positions. We don't do that as it is. We don't do that.
I understand we don't do that, and that's why that's my point. We
Yep.
don't do that, and
Correct.
I wouldn't expect anyone to do that in any industry.
That's correct.
And for us to measure success by counting the number of diverse staff at the beginning of the school year versus the end as a measure of success, to me, is a step in the wrong direction.
Mhm.
It's
It's one measure with, again, the mitigation of maybe there wasn't even a position available. So when we're looking at that from beginning to end, it's going to be very dependent. And again, it's another safety net that's within here is it's representative of our demographics that we currently have of students. Because if we're to say that we're anticipating 100% of our hires, which is nowhere in here,
No, I know
that are
that.
going to be of culturally diverse background, but they're not representative of our student population, we're still fitting within what we are intending to do, which is, again, being open and not discriminatory for folks that want to apply to positions. But to be very frank and honest, we know where we live. This is
yeah,
New Hartford,
yeah.
and we are not extremely diverse. So we're doing our best efforts to put together a plan to say, we want to embrace, we have programs in place, we have mentorship pieces that are in place, and we want to embrace everybody that comes aboard. So that's the intent of this. The measurement components, I'm assuming, can be tweaked throughout. I get your concern, because then it would look like, well, you're not going to meet your goal because you're starting with this, and
No,
then your percentage isn't.
I'm with you. Yeah, I just bring it up as a method to say we should mention merit in here more often.
Yeah.
Because I don't think the word is in this plan.
It's not, no. I don't have merit in there. No.
No, and I know that.
Yep.
And that's how we should base our hiring, on merit only,
Hmm.
blind
Yeah.
to anything else. That's my point.
I understand.
I'm not here to sit on a soapbox, but merit is why we hire people.
Yeah.
And have a great school system. Merit.
Qualifications, certifications, experiences, what they bring to the table, understood.
I just wish we could put merit in here somewhere and highlight merit as much as everything else, because that's what the most important driving factor is getting to have a good system.
Yeah. And that's how we drive our hiring process now. This is just, again, making sure that folks understand that we are not discriminatory on top of that. Of course.
Okay, do we, excuse me, have any other discussion?
Tim, I had a question, if I could ask the question.
Sorry, D, hold on. I think that's good. Okay, go ahead.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Jeff, can you just explain this is another mandate coming down from the state again, which is state power in our local schools, and leaving decisions like this should be left to the local school districts. Can you give some explanation around this mandating again? And I also agree with Tom. I find it very troubling that we don't have the word merit based on experience, based on, again, the word merit is a good word to be putting throughout this document, and it's not in there at all. So I am concerned, like Tom, that we're not hiring for the right reasons, that we're hiring because we have to, have a set quota. We should be hiring based on the best possible person. And so I'd like to see the word merit throughout the document or something similar to that.
Understood. And that is, again, so let me go back to the first part. It's relative to Public Act 23-167. So that's the basis for this plan and a lot of other legislation that we are currently enacting through our board policies, through our Board of Education meetings. For merit specifically, that is embedded within our interview process and questions. So that's where we're attaining what experiences do you bring to the table. That's where the resume is coming into play. That's where our experienced team is sitting around making sure that this is the best fit possible. This plan is just looking at diversity in general, taking a look at making sure we're trying to attract folks that have different cultural backgrounds. This is not just a merit-based component. Our merit-based component is within our current structures now. That is within the interview process, round 1, round 2, and it's not looking for a quota whatsoever. We are going to always hire the best candidate for the job. That's going to be based on a lot of things. We're not going to hire, a teacher that may not have as good of qualifications just because we're trying to fill a quota. We are going to hire based on who the best candidate is. That's what we're doing. That's what we're going to continue to do. So the intent of this plan is to attract folks, make sure that we're broadcasting our positions to a broader group of folks, whether it's through job fairs, it's looking to capture more. But if you haven't been following the news, this is, or anything educationally related right now, this is educational positions are impossible to fill right now. We are lucky that we get 1, maybe 2 candidates for a position. That's the reality of where we're living right now in the world of education. There are still districts, it is March, that still do not have classroom positions filled, music positions filled. You name the job, there are still openings throughout the state of Connecticut. This is making sure that we broaden our networks, our abilities to attract as many people as we can, and making sure that folks know we are not discriminatory. This is across the state of Connecticut. We want to encourage everybody to apply to our jobs. That's the intent of this. It's not to say that we have to meet a quota. It's not to say that, someone with less merit is going to be hired over someone with more merit. We weed through that process, through the interview process again, and we attain that information through our questions, through our model lessons that people are teaching, through background checks, references, for example. We're attaining a lot more of that through our process that currently exists. That's how we hire. This is just making those efforts. Hey, the pool is wide open. We want to capture as many candidates as we possibly can. We don't want people to think that they only hire this type of demographic, because that's not the case. So that's the intent and spirit behind this, if I could parse it out a little bit more clearly.
Do you have any additional questions? All right, so we have a motion by Penny and a second by Tim to approve, what are we calling this? Increasing Educator Diversity Plan. I heard some proposed changes from Kristen and some proposed changes from both Tom and Deirdre on the line. So again, I'll leave it up to you, Penny and Tim. Do you want to leave this as it is? Do you want to make changes to this?
I would just like to say I'm comfortable with Jeff's response to my questions. If he feels comfortable that he can be at benchmarks, I just wanted him to have the opportunity to correct what might have been a clerical error in the plan.
All right, I'll amend my original motion to include that we add the word merit as suggested by Tom and Deirdre to this plan.
I'll second the amended proposal.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of approval of the Increasing Educator Diversity Plan as amended to include the merit of the applicant in several areas throughout the plan, signify by raising your hand. Deirdre?
I have my hand raised.
He's on the call and has raised hand.
Hand raised too for Frank. Hand
He's
was
got-
raised. Yep.
oh, Frank is there
He
too?
put his, he hand raised, yep.
All right.
The icon, not the, yeah.
So the motion passes unanimously. Okay, moving on to old business, 2024, 2025 budget. I'll turn it back over to you, Jeff.
Got it. So I will add the components of merit and then submit plan. Is there any objection to do that? Okay. Just want to make sure. All right. Okay. All right, next up is our, it's not? Okay. Try that again.
You just have to select the tab when you're under the Chrome tab.
Yeah, it
too.
did, it won't let me. Oh, wait, here we go, I got it. Thank you, Kristen.
You're welcome.
Good to go? Yes. Excellent. Okay, so if I could, I'll grab the mic. Testing, Paul? 2, 3, okay, fantastic. All right, so just to take us through our last budget workshop and the board challenging the superintendent to reduce by 275,000 or a target of 5.25. This is a quick recap of where we were for viewing public, but also for board members here. And that's also within our board packet available online. So let me just walk through the presentation. Originally, we started with a 769,364 budget at 8.17%. Additional good news savings came about from the IDEA 611 grant and being able to utilize some of those monies this year and enroll them into next year at 25K. And then the medical expense line was originally 11.6% as reported by Brown & Brown for our block of insurance for our medical. And that was decreased to 10.95, giving us an additional savings of approximately 84.61. So that brought us down to 781 at, with a monetary number of $735,903. The board then voted at that point in time, after that was presented last week, to reduce again by 275,000 or to get to a target of 5.25. These are the proposed components to get us closer to where they are. So this section is titled Proposed Reductions. Our excess cost grant, that is monies that are reimbursed to boards of education for students that are outplaced above and beyond the cost that is factored at a 4.5 times per pupil expense minus the cost of tuition of special education students that are outplaced. So that would be a savings to our board. Currently, that is under a town revenue component. So we're going to be working with our Board of Finance to iron that out. Our tuitions and outplacement had a tweak in the number, about $38,000, which was fantastic. Emergency repairs were $20,000 cut from the budget. Legal fees, $10,000, and maintenance of $15,000. So emergency repairs, as I've described to the board before, that is a line item that is extremely unpredictable. Legal fees, we will not be in negotiations, so $10,000 coming off, which hopefully is okay. And then our maintenance fees being dropped off from the plant operations as well, meaning no new furniture requests and things of that nature. Online subscriptions, we were able to also drop by $5,000. Recognition and hospitality, $500, and curriculum materials dropping back down to $500 as well, to give us a total of $231,000. This would bring our budget down to approximately 5.49%, or an ask of $516,000, $516,900. Yes.
All right, I want to make sure the board understands this excess cost grant was a topic of discussion last night. So I'd like to make sure the board understands what this is, where it sits in the history of this. Currently, as Jeff said, this excess cost grant is one of the grants we get back from the state. This currently sits in the general town budget. And it's been that way since we've gotten the grant, right? It's something that, again, when we met last night, there was discussion with the auditors. The auditors did present. The Board of Finance Chair, Carrie Guilfoyle, did question where this money should sit when it comes back to the town. It's different than ECS, right? And Jeff, please correct me as I'm trying to present this, but it's different than ECS, which again is a reimbursement that goes to the town. That doesn't come to the Board of Ed. All the other grants, similar to the IDE 611 grant, comes back to the Board of Ed. The discussion last night was that prior administrations weren't able to quantify what this grant reimbursement would be for unknown reasons. Again, nobody knew why. It is a reimbursement based on our rising special ed costs, and it's a grant that comes back. So again, it should offset, and our increases should be net of the grants we get back. There was some debate about it last night. The debate wasn't closed. There'll be further discussion of it. So I want to make sure the board's aware that it's always been on the town side. There's discussion from the Board of Finance Chair and clearly from Jeff and myself advocating for it to be on the Board of Ed side, but there's more discussion that needs to happen on this before that's actually moved. Is that fair?
Yes, very well stated. So the educational cost share is established, fully funded, given to the towns at a tune of about 2.9 million for educational purposes. Excess cost grant fluctuates because not only is it a tuition reimbursement, it is not considered a revenue. It's a reimbursement that fluctuates because the state can determine how much we either will fully fund that excess cost fund or we will not. Historically, it has not been fully funded. So this is a conservative number of $130,000 funded from the 70% of that 4.5 time per pupil per pupil expense taken away from the tuition costs. So you have to meet that threshold. That's at a 70%. Because historically, I've not seen the state of Connecticut fund that fully because they receive a multitude of outplacements that they have a fund that then they divide equally throughout all. So that's why it's not funded at 100%. That has a tiered system that they project every July. But as the school year moves through and students are identified to need outplacements, that fund balance changes dramatically because then it's divided and dispersed throughout all 169 school districts in Connecticut.
So I'd like to say one more thing, and then again, I want to make sure everybody understands this, because if this doesn't go towards the Board of Ed budget, right, this reduction of $130,000 is not real to us, right? So the 5.49 is not 5.49, right, clearly. Again, indications last night, and, having the Board of Finance Chair say she wants education with education, it only makes sense. Again, and the auditor, again, at the same time, said it is typically done that way in other districts. Why we do it that way here is a little atypical. Right? Any questions on any of these items before we go on to the next page?
When do you think she might have an answer?
I think the discussion is meant to take place on Saturday.
I say something. So what happens if they decide not to? Can we fight that?
We can go back and we can motion to, again, ask them to reconsider it, but the Board of Finance has ultimate authority over where the money goes within the budgets.
It's also statutorily, if you look it up,
Mhm.
it's statutorily protected. That is a reimbursement that is given back to the boards of education.
So it should be cut and dry.
From our perspective, yes.
But where the auditors said last night that it really should belong with us and not with the town, I don't see why the Board of Finance would vote against it.
Correct. Yep. Just want to, again, make sure we're transparent.
Yep.
Any other questions? Okay. Whatever.
All right, so I didn't want to completely say, hey, Board of Ed, my incredible board members, I wasn't able to get to the full amount. The two proposals that I have going forward are for your vote this evening to discuss and decide what you'd like to do. So if we're sitting at the $569,000, proposals to get us closer to that 5.25 mark that you originally challenged me to try to attain. One method of getting there is to cut 1 day's worth of service for occupational therapy. Occupational therapy services students, with special education needs, but also others as well. But specifically if it's on their IEPs. So that would be a savings of $16,000. What a 0.2 FTE decrease means is having that individual for one less day. So a 0.2 is relative to 1 day. A 1.0 FTE is having a full-time employee working Monday through Friday, normal hours. So this would have the occupational therapist be with us one less day. That proposal will get us down to 500,900 and at a percentage of 5 31/100ths. The other consideration, this would bring us down even further below that threshold of 5 1/4 would be to have our speech language pathologist that we have in district right now be with us one less day than as we from the original superintendent's proposal. So that would be a savings of $19,000 having that individual not service kids for that one additional day. So that would be at a 5 11/100ths or 481,900 total superintendent's proposed budget. So a couple options are before the board to discuss and to think about. We go back here at the 5 1/2 mark to leave it as such, to then be adopted by the Board of Education for my presentation on Saturday morning, or to vote on either one or both as reductions. And I'd be more than happy to answer questions about either one of those additional pieces.
Do we have any questions? Yes.
Under the first round of cuts, the maintenance item for 15,000, did you have one item in mind, or was this a general maintenance area?
General maintenance area across
Nothing specific.
furniture replacements, things that are that would have been necessary otherwise. But again, anything I'm proposing is not to impact our current delivery and excellent instruction. So anything I'm proposing as cuts before tonight's vote is staying as far away as I can from impacting children. That was the intention behind it.
And then within this money, within this budget that we have in front of us, then there's still no discussion of the ASO.
No,
That money is not in this budget.
that is not in this
It's
budget.
in last year's budget,
That was earmarked in the budget that we are currently living in now.
so we theoretically we hire a person for
For
one
one-
year and then not rehire them next year. As of this
It would have to
budget.
be in the new budget that is created for the year after. So it would be like a July to July hire so that it can cross over the budgets.
So, but we'd be skipping a year if it's not in this budget, or no?
No,
We have-
no,
we've
because it's
already-
earmarked now.
Because we already pushed off a year, so, yeah, understood. All right,
Yep.
so we don't necessarily need to put it in this budget.
That is correct. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Of course.
So let me understand this. The $40,000 or however much you still have left out of the 75 that you started with is in the 23-24 budget, correct?
Yes.
So to answer Tom's question, would you take that $40,000 and put it into the 24-25 budget can you move it from one year to another? And hire that ASO?
If it's contracted, then that can be encumbered and can request through Board of Finance to hold that money over. Or if it's a contract, like we purchase other contracted services in advance, we could enter into a contract with said individual and pay that contract so that that is paid off before the end of the fiscal year. So there's more than one way to do that.
The end of which fiscal year? This
This
one?
year that we're currently living in. So if the contract is agreed upon, then I could state or take the monies and say, let's encumber them because this is a set salary that we're going to be paying this said individual for the services provided for the upcoming year.
But then what year would he be here?
Next year, July to July. He or she would be here July to July. Yeah, it's like
Oh.
we could. Or agree upon terms of contract.
but you'd need the Board of Finance approval to
If
take
it's-
that $40,000, which normally would go back into the general
General fund.
fund.
Yep, or to be expended in any other fashion for this year, but that was the intent, is to have that individual for this upcoming school year.
For next September,
For, yes, I would say July to July would be more,
24 to 25.
yes.
Okay.
And that would then put us in another cycle for budget in the following year to come.
Any additional questions?
All right, so I have one other. And you told me I couldn't ask too many questions. Sorry.
As long as it's not about, it's about this.
It is about this. So I noticed that in our questions at our last meeting, I had asked about I realized one of the salary increases was a contract made previous to your coming here. So we can't do anything about that. The other one, is that someplace in a contract? That 6% increase?
I don't know which item you I'm not, I don't know what that's reflected on, based on tonight. I'm going to guess that it's,
Because I think.
I
you
know
had
the
said-
budget in and outside, so I'm going to guess it is a contingency that I have in place that's directly related to negotiations, but I don't know for sure because I don't have before me what you're requesting or asking. That's my guess, my best guess right now. Unless you know a particular object that I'm not following with you on. But that's my guess as to why that increase is greater than the norm, because it's contingent upon what we are working on
Currently,
negotiations.
that person is in a contract, a union contract.
Yeah,
It's one of the ones that's being negotiated now,
okay, so then it is contingent, it's a contingency dependent on negotiations.
but the increase that person is getting is higher than what we gave that union the last time, in the last go-round.
Understood, it's a contingency, that's why. That's all I could comment on it because it's under negotiations.
Okay.
Can't talk any more about it.
Okay.
Any further questions? All right, Jeff, if you have the information, the reduction of an occupational therapy by one less day. Do you know how many students are served by this individual on a weekly basis?
On a weekly basis, Mike, I would let you answer. I don't know that one off the top of my head. Okay.
Again, my question is, again, now you're taking, right, that group of individuals, and now you're increasing.
Yep, it would go from a 5-day-a-week service to now
And I'm going to
condensing
ask
it
the
to
same
4
question,
days.
Mike, while if you're looking it
For
up, I'm going to ask the
SLP
same,
too.
yes, I'm going to ask the same question about the speech language.
All right, so we'll give Mike some time to look that up.
Can I ask a question related to that then?
Sure.
Since Mike's looking up the information. So if, I'm assuming this is a 5-day per week position that we reduced to only a 4-day per week position? Both of them?
Not both, no.
Okay, well,
It's just one less day of the week. The occupational therapist, we were
Yeah.
proposing to have as a full-time. This would now take the individual down to a 0.8, which is one less day.
so it was one less day per week.
Yes, sir.
So they work 4 days per week instead of 5.
Correct.
Yeah, the same with this one.
The SLP,
Yeah,
Mike, was that a 3 to a 4 day?
okay.
Yeah, I got it right.
All right, so it's reduced by 1 day.
1 day of the
But-
week.
So if an individual student normally went to this person 5 days, now they would go to 4 days.
Dependent on so if they're receiving speech language services Monday through Friday, this would have to be changed to a 4-day, but it's typically hours of service that are given. So that other time that was going to be made up, let's say it's Friday, just for ease.
Yeah.
Then that half hour of time that they were going to have on Friday now has to be met either Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday in the individual schedule with the caseload of the individuals that they have. So it may have to, the student may have to join a group, or if there's other times that are carved out by the SLP or the occupational therapist, that's up to them to develop their schedules in collaboration with all the classroom teachers and other services that a student provides. So this is a constriction of availability for the individual to provide services for the kids. It's going to take a lot more creative thinking and collaborative efforts to make that happen for both positions because they're consolidated by a day.
So, but it's, thank you. And then,
You're welcome.
So but it's not like there's be certain students who would receive 0 services now because.
Can't do that,
No,
right? Yeah.
So they're going to still receive services, but maybe it'll be a 2-on-1 or a 3-on-1 rather than a 1-on-1. But it's someone getting kicked out of service.
It may be we can't legally, no one can be removed from a service. This is going to take other efforts to make sure that the students still receive what is legally bound in their IEP based on their goals and objectives. So they still will receive the service. It's going to be a lot more creativity and try to make it happen, because with one less day, it's not just one student that's being seen on that additional day. There's a caseload on that day. I'm not going to pretend to have a number, but I'll just throw it out there. 10 students are seen on that day. Those 10 students will now have to be filtered into the Monday through Thursday minus that day. And that's for the OT as an example. I'm not giving specific numbers to it because they can fluctuate. And then for the speech language pathologist, who is going to provide services for students during that extra day, now they'll have to do it from, instead of the 3 days, they're going to have to do it within those 2 days instead of the 3 that we were proposing as an example. So any students that were going to be seen on that day for speech language will now have to receive speech language therapy on the days that the individual is there and available.
So let me ask you a question as a follow-up to that, actually as a follow-up with what I heard. So the occupational therapist this year in 23, 24, how many days a week is that occupational therapist working?
4,
Currently 4 days a week.
correct. The original proposal in the superintendent's budget was to increase that by 1
Okay.
based
Is
on
that
the increase in caseloads that Mike presented a couple weeks ago.
Okay, so same thing with speech language pathologists. They were 3 days in the current year. Your proposed budget increased to 4 days for next year.
Correct.
So are we, and this may be the numbers you have, are we projecting more students in these programs than in the current year?
That is why. That's exactly the rationale why we proposed that.
Yeah, that's why I presented increase in services. So the OT works with approximately 50 students, but if you look at the increase since the beginning of the school year, her caseload increased 42% from the beginning of the school year till January.
250 students, or she started with less?
To about 50
To about 50. So that's the increased.
Yeah.
And next year, you're planning for 50 as well? You're proposing?
No, we're just trying to keep up with the rising need
Mhm.
for these students. And to answer your question for the speech language pathologist is approximately 22 students. But then when we talk about those service hours, it's about a 24% increase in service hours. Provide service support. So again, the increase was to keep up with the rise of services needed. Students IEP.
Questions? Jeff, if I ask another one, when we went through the budget presentation and Q&A last time,
Yes.
there was some discussion or some questions regarding sections.
Mhm.
And particularly the section in third grade going from 4 to 3 sections, which would increase class sizes based on the 64 to about 21. I don't see that within your proposal here. Can you tell us why you do not support that?
Sure. When we look at all of our sections and we look at the needs of all of the kids within a cohort, so we look at kindergarten, cohort of 50, 60 kids. We look at first grade, second, all throughout. Third grade has an impacted cohort that has significant need related to IEP services. So students that have been identified as special education, it's approximately 20% of the students in that entire cohort are in need of special ed services. We also look at students that have 504 accommodations. within their educational programming. So what we don't want to do is have classes that are overburdened with services and support and try to get the support and services for all the kiddos. And it obviously makes it extremely challenging to have so many needs and services in one classroom. So we spread the needs of our students across all 4 sections, consolidating them to 3, increases class size, but also adds the service needs that are going to be implemented into that classroom. That is based, the case manager has to make sure that all the needs are being met of that class, and also the classroom teacher does as well. So it's an additional burden. It's an additional job responsibility. It's an additional thing that I would not recommend, because it's not the best educational environment for our students. Would it fit within the class size guidelines? Yes. Is it best practice? I can't recommend that at this time. So we look very carefully at all of our cohorts. So if that's the case, that hopefully that gives you enough information to understand that we have a wonderful educational experience set up now with what we have with the smaller class sizes, so that it is a manageable educational experience that we are providing for all of our kids, and our staff can do it and do it effectively and do it well, versus making it more cumbersome or making it a lot more difficult to make sure that the needs of every single child are being met. In a classroom, when I was an educator of 15 kids, if I added another 5, it makes the world of a difference. And the younger that the kids are, the more individualized attention that they need. 100% true. They're brand new learners encountering the educational experience for the first or second or third time. As they get older, do they become more independent? Yes, they absolutely do. But we want to make sure that we are maintaining the most optimal setting that we can within our all of our grade levels. So yes, enrollment is down a little bit, but as I explained before, that is spread out through all the grade levels. It's not just one grade level to say, we could consolidate here, for example, or increase our class sizes here to make this work. So at this time, I'm not recommending that, because it has so many other impacts on our delivery of services and classroom composition, and making sure we maintain optimal educational environments within each individual classroom family.
Okay. So again, you said approximately 20%, right?
Yes.
Somewhere in that range.
Yep.
And that's IEPs and 504s together? Or
Probably a
plus
little bit higher.
504s?
Yeah, probably a little bit higher. So 20% for IEPs, just trying to remember the chart photographically in my mind,
It doesn't.
and probably another 5% for 504s.
All right, same question again. I know your basis, but where are we in the current kindergarten cohort going up to first grade?
Sure. Those numbers are still preliminary, and that's a dart that we're throwing in the dark to try to land on the bullseye. I don't have any firm projections of that number. I'm sorry, any firm registrations that are completed with that. We'll have more firm as the school year goes on, and we have our kindergarten visitation day. We'll see who's registering.
I'm sorry.
So,
No, I'm talking about the group that's going into first grade next year.
oh, got it. Yeah, we have 62 students currently in kindergarten now that will be first graders next year. Is that the cohort you're talking about?
This would tell me 60. I'm sorry, 62. Yes, 62.
Okay.
62, right?
Yep.
So again, my same question again. That has 4 sections, right? The
Yes.
question came up again, reducing to 3.
Mm-hmm.
Would you support that? So again, I'm thinking it's the same basis that you're talking, that
It
we
is
have
similar.
IEPs, right?
It is similar, yep. Not as high identified, because as students in kindergarten, they're very young. We're still working with them through the MTSS process, which is our intervention process, well in advance of becoming identified as special education students. So we're working with them with interventionists. Our paraeducators are supporting kiddos at a tier 1 level within the classroom, then a tier 2 level as paras and interventionists work with students more individualized, and then at a tier 3 level as well before going to evaluation. So they're still through the MTSS process in kindergarten and typically first grade before, if we suspect a learning disability, then we go through the PPT process, but that's later to come. So our IEP percentages would be lower in the lower grades, because we're not jumping to identify students or over-identify students. We want to make sure that we provide intervention and support services as much as we can well in advance of getting to that threshold.
Anything further? Seeing where we are, does anybody have, would anybody like to make a motion based on the information provided and proposed by our superintendent?
I'll make a motion to approve the proposed reductions of the initial first batch, so that the increase of budget would be $516,900, a 5.49% increase year over year.
Motion by Kristen to send to the Board of Finance with the board's approval, a 5.49% increase in dollar value of $516,900. Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
Now we have a motion by Kristen, second by Tim Russell. Is there any discussion?
I'm fine with that number. Just stating that for the record, but I don't think that's going to be a popular opinion because, you know, not everyone is in this town is 100% popular in favor of spending that kind of money on education. Like I said, I don't have a problem with it, but that's probably not a popular position. And I'm just going to bring up the fact that I think the Board of Finance can pick this out just as easy as I could, that, you know, we asked to cut a certain amount of money, and most of that cut came from, I'm not going to use the word gimmick because that's not a gimmick, but we actually had that money coming to us, but that's where the majority of the cut came from. It's not really a cut in or what we proposed. It's more of a, we're going to get more revenue than we anticipated. So really, we're only cutting $101,000 out of the budget at that number that we just motioned upon. And I don't think that's going to cut it with the Board of Finance or the tax base in this town.
I will say this, I'm not in favor of these proposed cuts. I feel that you can make more proposed cuts. I agree with Tom. I don't think it's going to fly with the Board of Finance. I think we've got to find more money someplace. I don't know. It's got to be some kind of creative bookkeeping that you do, but I can't approve it at this. I would rather see you get down closer to 4% or lower.
Is there a reason why we can't present this and see what happens with that 130 that they are going to decide on probably Saturday? You know what I mean? I guess, yeah.
No,
Anybody.
there's no reason
Okay.
that it can't be presented as such as I proposed. You can go with this current number that we're at or vote on additional cuts
Well, I
that
meant
are
the
here.
current number,
Yeah.
the 5.49, and then also see what they do with that 130 on
Sure.
Saturday, and then we can go back to
Sure.
the drawing board if need be, right?
Yes. So you're asking, was there a reason why? No,
Yeah.
I don't have a substantive reason outside of historical practice in the town of New Hartford.
Yeah, just real quick. I mean, 4% sounds great, but we all know inflation is absolutely ridiculous. It's really probably impossible to get to that number without cutting a teacher. And that is something I would never be in favor for unless it was total last resort. I think we're doing a disservice to our children by going that route, and we're also doing a disservice to that teacher itself who took this job expecting to have a career path. And we're looking at retaining employees, and then we're going to look at cutting a teacher, which is it's just not acceptable. So I don't think 4 is reasonable. I think the 5.49 would be great to bring back to them. And if they needed something additional, we could work with a couple other things, but I think that we have to keep that number relatively high and see what they say.
I'm not proposing cutting a teacher, but there are other places where monies can be cut. And it's not from our teacher pool. I don't believe in reduction in force.
Can I ask a question, Jeff? On the two positions that were on the other alternate pages, bringing back your earlier comment about no one's out there looking for filling these jobs. These other cuts on these positions, cutting a day here and a day there, will that lead that person to find a place where they could get 5 days a week? Or is that, again, I'm not asking for a crystal ball, but is this position a common full-time position that you don't often see for a 0.8 position?
Yes,
Is that-
Yeah.
So
that's obviously a better term of employment.
understood,
Yeah.
but how, again, I'm not familiar with the position. So is that always a full-time? Is it sometimes a 0.5, sometimes a 0.75, sometimes 0.8? I'm just,
It can fluctuate from my experiences. It can absolutely fluctuate depending on student need. The ideal is obviously to have as many opportunities for students to receive the service that they need. And when we limit that by an additional day, like I explained, it's just going to cause additional piggybacking and other constraints that then need to be ironed out at the building level. Because a student schedule is a student schedule. Like they're not going to be pulled to receive services when they're going to PE. They're not going to be pulled when they're going to recess, lunch, things of that nature. So it's a limited time that they can be pulled throughout the course of the day. I mean, yeah, I think it would be an optimal job if it was a full-time versus a part-time position. But sometimes we are blessed and fortunate to find an individual that is not looking to be full-time. Maybe they still want to continue a separate career path that they're on, or they're in studies for a program of study, or they are a mother or father who wants to be there for their family. So I know for me, it'd be a full-time, and it's just, if we're fortuitous and it lands that way and we have the individual, I'd like to make sure that we honor them and make their working conditions as favorably as we can. That's the point of this proposal, and to obviously meet our student needs first and foremost.
so are these people currently, this person currently employed, both these positions are currently employed? Would we be asking them to go to 4 days per week, just using that number? And would they still receive benefits, or they don't get affected, they have benefits?
One is a contracted service, occupational therapy, so that is not under Benny's. And I do not believe the speech language pathologist, I don't believe is Benny's either. I would have to verify that.
So these people come into our system, for those days we hire them and go out and potentially work other school systems?
They can, yeah. Yes,
To fill that fifth day or fourth day?
correct. So with this individual would have to connect with their other employment and say, no, I'm working full-time New Hartford, done there. And the other individual would then have to, again, inform other employer, no, I've accepted to work an additional day in New Hartford.
But currently, these people these individuals are working the 3 days and the 4 days a week,
That is correct.
right?
Yep.
They're proposing to go to 5 and 4.
And 4.
So the individuals are employed here at 3 and 4 today.
Yep.
Deirdre or Frank, I know you're online. Do you guys have anything that you'd like to ask or add to the discussion?
Not at this time.
Frank, go ahead.
Is he muted? He has
Can you technically help unmute Frank? Yeah. Oh, Frank, you're there.
Hi, yeah, I was muted, so I tried to talk a couple of times, but I agree with the 4.9. I think you'll find people out there that like the 4-day work week in some cases, based on their life circumstances. And I like the idea of taking a shot at the 5.49 and providing the best education that we can for the kids and hope for the best. And we have those options for later if we have to use them.
Could you repeat what you said?
To go with the 549
Okay,
was
Thank you.
essentially it.
thank you.
Jeff, do you know, right, you've used the term a few times about contingencies that you have in your projections for next year
Mhm.
in your proposed budget.
Mhm.
Do you have any sense for the total value of what you term contingencies?
No, because it's a fluctuating percent that hasn't been settled with through negotiations just yet. So I don't have a finite number. I have a parameter. But for negotiation purposes, feel somewhat uncomfortable sharing that, knowing that I have to maintain the confidentiality of the process that we're going through right now with our bargaining units.
So if we wanted to remove the contingencies greater than, call it 3%, you don't have to talk about it.
Yeah, I wouldn't be bargaining in good faith, so I can't. I know what you're saying, but I can't comment on that.
Oh, yeah, no, yeah, right, that makes sense, I understand that.
Yeah.
I mean, as I look at this, we did, again, I'm gonna say, we did challenge you to go back to get us to 5.25, and I do agree that, the excess cost grant was the low-hanging fruit to get us there. I don't want to, and I've said this before, I would not want to impact the special education. And I understand the proposals, but I also understand that they're working these days now, and we're providing the services to our students. We don't know we're going to plan next year. As much as I wouldn't want to reduce these, I think that, financially we've said it before, we're in a tough place. All right, so whether it's here or somewhere else within the budget, I think we have to propose to the Board of Finance this 481.9 increase of 5.11. Whether it's through these two or sending you back to go find other areas. But I think at the end of the day, that 5.11 is where we should be going to the Board of Finance. That's my opinion. And again, I don't want to tell you that it's those two positions or it's somewhere else, but that's where I think we need to be. Any other discussion?
Wasn't Kristen's motion for 5.49? So she would have to amend her motion.
If she'd like to, or we can bring it to a vote.
I do not wish to amend my motion.
All right, seeing there's no further discussion, the motion on the floor is to approve or to send to the Board of Finance a proposed budget with a 5.49 increase in dollar value of $516,900 from last year. Motion by Kristen, second by Tim Russell. Why don't we take a voice vote so we can get them on the call? We'll start on this side. Tim?
Yes.
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 No.
Go online. Deirdre?
Yes.
Frank?
Yes.
And I'm a no. So that passes 5-3. I'm sorry, 5-6 to
No,
5-3-0. Okay. That is all we have under old business, correct?
Yes. So then with that motion, this then changes to the Board of Education proposed budget.
Yes, sir.
So then I will have new packets printed, ready to go for Saturday morning when we present to the Board of Finance.
Okay, that is our last item. Motion to adjourn.
So moved at 7:04.
7:04 by Penny. Do we have a second? Second by Tom. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Thank you all.
Thanks, everybody.